Greetings. This presentation will provide a foundational framework for individuals new to climate change effects, preparedness, and resilience principles. We will review some of the most salient solution approaches cities and regions are using to reach their desired resilience vision. We are already experiencing the effects of the changing climate. Warmer average temperatures, wetter spring and winter, floods, and more severe storms with damaging straight-line winds. The weather trends are anticipated to continue. WICI, Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts, forecasted that by 2050, the average annual temperature will increase by 6 degrees. Science-based research tells us that the global temperature increase is due to the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide. CO2, the most predominant one, is known to have a lifespan of 1,000 years plus, hence why we will continue to experience these effects. This is why it's so important that we support climate mitigation solutions like the Bipartisan Carbon Dividend Act 763. This policy will reduce America's emissions by at least 40% in the first 12 years. It will improve health and save lives, and the carbon dividend puts money directly into people's pockets. Given the urgency of the situation, all of these actions are necessary. Mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and sustainability. Mitigation and resilience need not be in competition for resources. They can enhance each other when collaboratively designed. So mitigation has two aspects: the climate mitigation, which are actions to reduce greenhouse gases or emissions that cause warming of the planet and climate change, and hazard mitigation, actions to reduce or eliminate risk to people and property. Resilience, on the other hand, looks forward. It looks for ways to make systems endure and thrive even in an imbalanced world. It is about getting better than before, not just bouncing back, for the benefit of all citizens, particularly the poor and vulnerable, in both good times and bad times. It's also everlasting adaptive learning cycles, solving problems across infrastructure, social, and natural systems. And finally, sustainability, which works towards putting the world into longer-term balance without impairing future generations to meet their needs. There is a wise teaching based on the ancient Iroquois philosophy that many other indigenous cultures also believe. It is called the Seven Generations. This story reminds us of how balanced we need to be with our natural world and each other to sustain lives for generations. That our choices, our behaviors, and our mistakes reverberate through generations before us and after us. It teaches us to respect and care for all those generations. For a more inspirational narration of the full story, search for the Seven Generations Principle in YouTube from the academic Algonquin. The good news is that Wisconsin has many examples of actions covering the gamut from mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, starting with the state leadership of Governor Evers forming the Task Force on Climate Change, chaired by Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. This was formed in October 2019, and it will be delivering recommendations October 31st of this year. Climate Fast Forward Conference was another initiative of the Wisconsin Academies of Science, Arts, and Letters, asking for solutions from over 300 leaders from a variety of sectors in the state. City of Appleton has appointed a task force on resilience, Milwaukee Environmental Collaboration Office, and Green Bay Sustainability Commission, and recently hiring a Chief Resilience Officer. This is an example of a different approach by the Sustainability Institute that takes care of their driftless region in Wisconsin. They are approaching this by focusing on positive outcomes, leading with a mentality of abundance of well-being, clean air and water, nutritious food, decent jobs, and biodiversity, all working towards a vibrant future for our communities. Resilient networks and the role of the Chief Resilience Officer has emerged in the last 10 plus years as an effective means to deal with the complex intersectionality of human, social, economic, and environmental elements, all impacted by natural hazards. The Resilient Cities Network builds on the legacy of the successful 100 Resilient Cities initiative started by the Rockefeller Foundation in 2013. There's now 1,000 plus cities applying resilience practice, and 90% of the member cities have institutionalized the role of the Chief Resilience Officer. What is a Chief Resilience Officer? Well, these are people that are strong communicators and connectors, able to turn complex information into language that speaks directly to practical problems across the diverse partners, foundations, corporations, vulnerable populations, and government. They play a key role to create resilience vision for the city and region and focus areas to work on. They promote using a resilient lens in all regional decisions, defining new policies and reforming existing ones as needed. These are 3 cities in the Midwest that have Chief Resilience Officers. Ron Harris from Minneapolis started in February of 2019. He is focusing on 3 pillars: racial equity, economic inclusion, and environmental justice. Climate change resilience is needed to prevent much human suffering and financial loss. The 2018 billion-dollar climate disaster map shows this huge burden that these climate disasters pose to the federal budget. Investing in climate resilience infrastructure and systems to better withstand these extreme weather events will reduce human and financial burdens. Resilience saves money in the long run. The National Institute of Building Sciences has issued a new report December 2019, in which they clearly affirm that mitigation and resilience represent a sound financial investment. The benefit-cost ratio has increased to $11 per dollar spent for adopting what they call model codes. It includes 3 model codes: the 2018 International Residential Code, IRC, the International Building Code, the IBC, and finally the International Code Council, also known as I-codes. These codes represent significant savings versus the 1990 era design, which have a benefit-cost ratio of $4, saving $4 per dollar spent. Another key factor to focus on is protection of vulnerable populations. It must be a first priority. It is well documented by the CDC and other nonprofits that vulnerable populations are likely to suffer more from extreme weather. Even during this time of COVID-19, they are disproportionately burdened by the disease. Mostly due to social inequities, these populations are affected because of where they live, where they work, the type of work, and the lack of access to better health care. These four factors have play an important role in putting vulnerable populations at risk during climate events. By improving these factors, we can save life and improve resilience. Conducting risk analysis to include all vulnerable populations and finding out where they live ensure that people without transportation can be reached as a first response, and ensure that messaging reaches them where they are. Social connectedness in particular would help greatly to increase trust and increase support within the neighborhoods such that they get help as needed. Innovative funding and coalitions are needed for multiple reasons. Public government resources cannot do it all. The escalating frequency and severity of natural hazards, like the California West Coast fires, will increase the cost of the FEMA bailouts and further affect the fiscal health of our country. We need to focus the 80% of resources that reside in the private and nonprofit sector to make progress faster and have greater impact, which will in turn reduce the cost of the climate bailouts. Another tool that has been developed is the collective impact framework. This tool, which is extensively used in Canada and is being used also in Wisconsin, is best suited to deal with complex and dynamic problems such as climate change and its many impacts. For the listing on the 5 conditions, the Chief Resilience Officer will be instrumental in facilitating the development of the shared vision and the common shared measurements to track progress towards specific goals. As you can see, there are now many more tools and successful examples of resilience to help our local tri-county region move faster and more effectively towards a resilient future. Thank you. These are the key resources that were used for the production of this educational video. There is much to learn about the various aspects of climate resilience. The study team has assembled many more educational videos that can be accessed by going to the League of Women Voters of Appleton website.